You know, Wolfenstein 3D doesn't really get that much love today, especially compared to its younger sibling Doom. It really doesn't help either that the modern remakes were kind of lackluster in my opinion. I get why it's overshadowed though. It's a pretty primitive first-person shooter and not really everyone's thing, with its maze-like interiors and hallways full of hit-scan enemies. For me, however, I really do like Wolfenstein a lot. I played a lot of World War II shooters as a kid, and I was a big fan of Return to Castle Wolfenstein, as well as even the Wolfenstein 2009. The original Wolfenstein 3D, even with how clunky it can be at times, is still really a lot of fun to play. With its tight corridors forcing a lot of cover-based combat, quick kill time, and pretty fast-paced gameplay for such an old game. It can get a bit exhausting with how many levels there are and how repetitive it can get. However, it's absolutely worth checking out if you're into retro FPS games. It's also surprisingly easy to start modding and does seem to have a small but fairly active modding community, though I think a lot of it has been absorbed by the Doom modders over the years. Nowadays, if someone really wants to get into Doom, you're spoiled for choice. The Doom modding scene has been going on strong for like 30 years now or more. For Wolfenstein 3D, it's a bit different. Many Wolfenstein WADs are built on top of Doom 2, and the grandfather of all of these is WolfenDOOM, made in the late 90s as a total conversion mod by Las Rojas. It is a faithful and accurate recreation of all of Wolfenstein 3D, including the additional levels in Spear of Destiny and the Nocturnal missions. Beyond recreating just its content, Las Rojas also made a number of his own mission packs, which are all generally quite good, I think, especially the later ones he made into the early 2000s. Las Rojas himself abandoned the project years ago and has since fallen on some pretty hard times, as per some posts I've seen he made since on DOOMWorld. But development of WolfenDOOM for modern versions of ZDOOM has continued at least until 2019, which is the most recent version of it I was able to find. And specifically, I should mention, this is of Las Rojas' WolfenDOOM. There have been other WolfenDOOMs that have come after it, kind of based on his original work or expanding it, and there's a lot of different options for WolfenDOOM or mission packs for it now. This does leave it a bit behind the current version of GZDOOM, which can lead to some bugs, but in my experience it runs pretty well without too many major issues. The most recent version, which I will link in the description, also includes all the map and mission sets that Las Rojas created along with WolfenDOOM. So I thought for this video I'd take a look at some of them and give them my thoughts. Now before really getting into WolfenDOOM, I want to quickly mention a few other projects which more or less descend from it, mainly Brutal Wolfenstein and Blade of Agony. Brutal Wolfenstein is what you'd expect if you've ever seen Brutal Doom. Mainly massive amounts of gore, mobile, really fast-paced combat, and a total revamp of the entire base game to suit this really high-octane, high-action playstyle. Personally, I'm not really the biggest fan of Brutal Doom type mods. I don't think it's bad or anything, but I generally prefer more vanilla gameplay style, unless it specifically suits the specific WAD for some reason. The combat changes and animations are cool, but honestly, I find it a little bit overwhelming. The gore and the visual effects get a little bit tiresome after a while for me. A big reason I really enjoy classic shooters like Doom and Blood and Wolfenstein is their simplicity and the purity of gameplay. That being said, however, I honestly prefer Brutal Wolfenstein to Brutal Doom. I don't really know what it is. Doom is a lot more varied with its combat already, so when I play Brutal Doom, I find I tend to get overwhelmed by the effects, just right in my face all the time, and often feel like I can't tell what's happening because there's just demons exploding everywhere. However, in Wolfenstein, with its mostly kind of like grayscale color palette, very toned down colors of the levels, really tight levels as well, and hordes of just human enemies. For some reason, it feels more satisfying with the combat changes Brutal Wolfenstein brings. Seeing a guard get splattered on a stone tile while I sprint down a hallway as the lights flicker around me, and chucking grenades through a doorway before popping off somewhere else, really just has a nice atmosphere, which I think suits the sort of World War II action fantasy that Wolfenstein is going for. If you want to try out some Wolf 3D, but with a more kind of modern shooter feel to it, definitely Brutal Wolfenstein is the way to go. Blade of Agony is another more recent project which is only tangentially related with Wolfenstein 3D, in that it's obviously set in the same universe with the same kind of character of BJ Blazkowicz. This game, however, is a true total conversion, built entirely for ZDOOM's more advanced engine features and completely expanding upon the scope of the original game. It's an entirely new storyline with all new enemies, a full campaign that retains the spirit of Wolfenstein within a retro shooter framework of the more modernized Doom engine. I've not played it through enough to give a full review here, but perhaps for a later video I'll give it an honest playthrough, as it does look like an amazing project. Specifically here, however, I'd like to take a look at just the WolfenDOOM project and Las Rojas' mission sets, which themselves expanded upon the core DNA of Wolfenstein quite a lot, in many ways feeling like the 90s Wolfenstein 2 we just never got. Now, if you check out the link in the description, you can download the pack I'm using here, which contains WolfenDOOM and all the mission sets Las Rojas ever made, as well as any other missions I'm going to be playing for this video. I'll include them there. A number of them are just recreations of the original missions for Mac and PC, so they don't differ much in functionality from the original, aside from running on the upgraded Doom engine. These specifically are the original missions, the Nocturnal missions, and Spear of Destiny. All of these are a big improvement over the original in my opinion, and in ZDOOM you can have a ton of new functionality available to make the gameplay a bit faster. The sprite work for the guns improved a lot, especially in the custom mission sets, which introduce new weapons and shake up the gameplay a little bit more. Like I said before, if you've ever played Wolfenstein 3D, you'll not find much new here. That being said, totally recreating the maps and missions in Doom 2 is not a small feat, and honestly, if you're not a big fan of Brutal Wolfenstein's style of gameplay, I would say this is the go-to way to play all of classic Wolfenstein, plus the expansions, in my opinion at least. The original Wolf 3D still holds up really well, however, as I said before, getting through all 3 episodes can be a bit of a slog, with the puzzles some maps throw at you. The 3rd episode is easily the strongest one. It has better enemy variety as well as the map design is generally a bit better. Not to mention Hitler is still a pretty fun boss fight, all things considered. When it comes to expansions, all of them, including the Mac-only episodes, are ported into WolfenDOOM for you to try out. Out of these, Spear of Destiny is marginally the best, as it more or less improves the map design and the level curve. Still, all the expansions are more of the same, in my opinion. They're not that much of a step up from just the original game. It does also annoy me that in Las Rojas' WolfenDOOM, for some reason, all the treasures use the exact same treasure box text or sprite. But it's not game-breaking or anything, just kind of a little bit annoying. I liked all the different little treasures you can collect in the original game. And also, I'm not really a secret hunting completionist, so I don't care that much. Ultimately, it's still just classic Wolfenstein in the shiny new engine. There are only so many ways you can make just like a maze of cubes into an interesting and non-repetitive combat scenario. That's where the custom scenarios come in, fully taking advantage of the new engine's features to have some maps that are more reminiscent from what you'd have seen in the late 90s and early 2000s Doom modding community, but still retaining a lot of that Wolfenstein flavor to them. These missions vary in quality a lot, in my opinion, some being more or less expansions upon the basic premise of the original game, like Halten Z, which is very reminiscent of the Escape from Castle Wolfenstein scenario in the original, but with some better level design, in my opinion. Others expand upon the game a lot more, bringing you a whole new environment and introducing more varied combat scenarios which improve the gameplay a lot. I'm going to take a look at 4 of these scenarios specifically, which I think are the most interesting. Those being Operation Eisenmann, Astrostein, Operation Rheingold, and Operation Arctic Wolf. I'm going to start off here with the oldest of these, Operation Eisenmann. I was pretty impressed with this upon starting. Really great level design work and gives it the sort of minimalist neoclassical style that the Nazis really favored. First thing I noticed was how difficult this was starting off. For one, you have to go through this small little choke point door to get into the office complex. And the main office is just full of these SS machine gun guards who soak up a ton of your shitty pistol bullets and just smear you across the smooth marble tiles with their spray of bullets from across the room. The initial room is full of them, and taking them out with pistol only, with very limited ammo, is a massive pain, starting out even on just Hurt Me Plenty, let alone the higher Death Incarnate difficulty, which honestly I just gave up on. Here's where I learned one of the first traits of Las Rojas' maps, which would pop up a lot later. Just brutal combat scenarios with minimal cover, these tight choke points you just have to go through, and really barely any health or ammo until you can really dig around the level for some secret rooms or something like that. After getting through the main foyer, it was a bit easier. At least in the hallways, I could duck into an office or around some corner for cover. The rest of the level, and basically everyone after that, it revealed another trait of Las Rojas' maps. These just annoying key hunts. Searching every map for some key constantly through every identical office room is really tiresome, and basically every single map ends up like this. Later levels just ramped up the difficulty, running through massive barren corridors with really no cover, while chain gunners spray you from above. It was a fun set of missions, but pretty exhausting to play. I'd say this is probably like mid-tier for the set. That being said, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it used the assets and themes of Wolfenstein really well to make some good combat scenarios, even if the difficulty was a bit much later on. The first level is also by far the best looking. The sleek modern offices are much more interesting to fight in than the endless gray, just like linear slaughter pits of the lower levels. Next was the Astrostein trilogy, plus the prequel Portal. This is 3 episodes plus the 1 map episode Portal. Now, this is a set I really wanted to like. The theming is just really cool. Having the Nazis in space is an amazing theme. The design of everything here is top-notch as well. Really gives off that kind of fascist Star Trek feeling. A little bit like those Mirror Universe episodes you see in Deep Space Nine. Like I said, I really wanted to like this, but honestly, I was just exhausted by it even before reaching episode 2. I did skip ahead a little bit and found myself stuck in some sort of like key puzzle, which I honestly had no idea how to work, as checking out every single corner of the Nazi space station didn't bring up a single key. Really sad, honestly, because again, the themes and designs and everything are so great. However, this set also feels like the least Wolfenstein out of all the classic Wolfenstein WolfenDOOM maps, which makes it feel as if this would have just been better if it was just like a Doom WAD instead. There are already fantastic Nazi in space themed Doom WADs out there anyway. As for the prequel Portal, again, while the theming was excellent, after a core digging up some magical artifacts in Egypt, the actual combat was just a slog of gigantic open areas full of machine gunners and tedious key switch puzzles that you have to constantly go back and forth, looking for some secret that's just like an exact identical wall, clicking every single wall trying to find it. Really exhausting to play this one, despite how cool everything looked. I put honestly all of these at the bottom out of the missions I played. I did hear Astrostein 3 is actually pretty great, but getting stuck almost immediately on some stupid key puzzle really killed my motivation to finish it. Operation Rheingold was next, and this was a major treat, easily the best so far, even though it's only 2 episodes out of a planned 7, which were not all completed. It's a shame really, but what is there is pretty fun. Lots of detail in the levels, making them far more interesting to explore than Astrosein or Eisenmann. The first episode is set in a Paris hotel, where you're ambushed by the Gestapo after an apparent disagreement with your roommate. While the fights are difficult and the hotel's crawling with machine gunners, I never felt too oppressed, as in most of the encounters, I was able to retreat behind a corner or into some cover to avoid just getting shredded. The 2 biggest combat zones are the dining room and the entranceway. The dining hall is not so bad, as there's a lot of cover and I can kill most of the SS from outside. The main hall, however, was a bit of a challenge. In my first playthrough, I died here because I just got shredded trying to make it down the main stairway towards the rear of the hall. There was even an angry chef mini-boss in the kitchen once you get into the service corridors. I guess this is Paris after all, this is France. The next level was the top floor of the hotel, which was mostly the same as the level below. Some nice set pieces like the bar and the pool hall, and generally easier enemies as opposed to the hordes of Gestapo. The rooftop and pool area had a sort of mini-boss battle with a group of these heavy gunners. Not that bad to take out, as they tend to all shoot one another as they chase me around. I was able to pick up a flamethrower, which would be handy later. For now, I just use it to make some barbecue dog. The last section is a large-scale street battle with tons of enemies, but at least decent cover and lots of ammo around. There's even some armored vehicles to fight off, which took me several tries before I was able to fry them with the flamethrower. After this section, you are captured by the Gestapo and sent to their prison camp. While this segment isn't as visually interesting as part 1 in my opinion, the combat scenarios are much more fun and varied than just like a bunch of guys in a room, and the level design is way better. This is another 3-part mission, but all of them are really well made and varied, going from torture rooms and prison cells to the Gestapo offices, and eventually back out into the streets of Paris to fight a group of tanks with your Panzerfaust. The levels here are absolutely sprawling with tons of details if you explore, like some questionable interrogation being done in a dingy back room by a SS guard. You get a good feeling of causing chaos in the Paris Gestapo HQ, as you just make a complete mess of the place. I also like the return to the comfy office setting, which I really liked in Eisenmann. Sadly, this episode ends on a bit of a wet fart, as no further episodes were ever finished, and probably never will be. So it looks like we will never get to see the Swiss Chateau level, or the planned final episode where we enter a portal to meet with Hitler in Agartha, and fight legions of gnomes in order to claim the One Ring.
High dive into frozen waves where the past comes back to life. Fight fear for the selfish pain, it was worth it every time.
Overall, a great pair of episodes that give a nice combat experience paired with the great World War II theming. Easily worth playing and would be my favorite if not for the next episode on the list. The last mission I'll play is Operation Arctic Wolf. Now, between this and Rheingold, it's probably a closer tie for which is the better one. However, unlike the previous one, this one is actually complete and has some great theming of its own. Not to mention, this has been remade several times by other members of the community, which makes it by far the most modernized of the WolfenDOOM original missions. This version I played specifically is Arctic Wolf Redux, a more polished version of Las Rojas' original, which doesn't really change too much gameplay-wise. There's also a more expansive Arctic Wolf Revisited, which adds a lot of new weapons and changes, making for an entirely different experience if you're interested in that. So let's go to Norway and put a stop to the German nuclear program. Arctic Wolf is easily the most thematically rich level set. I'm assuming it takes place during the Allied invasion of occupied Norway around 1940. This is themed like a covert ops mission, even if Wolfenstein doesn't really play much like a tactical shooter. While these levels have a lot of annoying key hunts, at least they're themed really well, and usually it's fairly obvious where to proceed next. The first few levels take place in a snowy fjord, or at least it looks like it, as you make your way through the German bases and up a deep ravine. While I didn't die that often, I did find myself almost constantly scrounging for ammo, and quite often having to just knife some guards, or especially the stupid dogs. Rats make a return from Rheingold as well. I think I forgot to mention the rats there, but holy hell, do they make me rage so much. I feel like they do just as much damage as a dog bite, except they're way faster, way harder to hit, and they just like swarm you out of nowhere. At least the rats here are not as bad as in Rheingold. Maybe the Parisian rats are just really aggressive. I played this without any auto-aim and with full movement, which combined with the changes Redux makes it a pretty fun and dynamic combat experience. Redux adds some brutal Wolfenstein flavor with big gibs and grenades, so I really enjoyed that a lot. This mission also introduced the Rocketeer, a really miserable enemy who hits you with a sneaky face rocket from across the map. Making my way up the canyon, I had to be very careful of landmines and sea mines in the waterways. In one section, to enter the main German base, I had to swim up a long section of frozen river, full of mines and, for some reason, sharks. Later, we do find out that apparently the Germans are breeding sharks, for God knows what purpose. The lack of ammo was really stressful for me the entire time. I felt like for most of these combat engagements, I come out of them with basically just enough ammo for the next one only, and plenty of times I had to fall back to the knife just to finish off the few of the leftover guards. The power station itself is just a mess of gray corridors again. We do have some outdoor segments like when we go to the dam, but it's still better than Eisenmann in my opinion, because at least these combat engagements do feel a bit more fair, and Redux graciously makes it so that some enemies drop these small health packs. The original version was so stingy with health, and there were a ton of times where I just have to reset the level because I was like basically soft locked with like 1 HP or something. I played through most of the game on the original version as well as completing it on Redux. I'd say Redux is a major improvement in my opinion, and I'm looking forward to even trying out Revisited later if I can ever get Edge Classic source port to work on my computer. After making it through the power station, we come to the secret labs where the Germans are breeding their sharks. I guess Hitler wants to get a shark army to take over Atlantis or something like that. That would be a cool idea for a map set, though. I guess it explains why there's so many sharks in the waters around here. This is the kind of out-of-the-box thinking that really everyone loves about Nazi Germany, I think. At least the History Channel fans. That being said, blowing up a school of sharks with a rocket is incredibly satisfying. From there, we come to the U-boat pens, which is a really great thematic level, even if the underwater sections are a bit tedious. For me, I'm just a big fan of Das Boot and submarines, especially the U-boat force. Finally, at the far end of the pens, we eventually find the Sea Devil, or Sea Teufel. Sea Teufel, by the way, is the nickname of a real person, Felix von Luckner, who is a commerce raider and the Kaiser's pirate in World War I. This battle is really brutal, with a horde of heavies guarding the boat. Once we can swim inside, we commandeer the ship, kill the captain and the crew, and shoot the nuclear reactor, which apparently makes it explode. I guess this is just shitty 1940s tech, it seems. Or I guess just typical German technology that breaks the instant you bang it around a little bit. The rest of the missions are mostly a long escape, along with rescuing a few Allied operatives. Finally, we can make it back to the coast and call for an American submarine to extract us. A really great Allied victory. This mission set was amazing, to be honest. Pretty difficult, but at least on Redux, I felt it was manageable. My biggest issue was honestly ammo. I'd be constantly scrounging until I get like a big windfall from a secret room somewhere, which would last me maybe a level or two until I ran out again. However, it was never too bad and always felt fairly fair. Like, I never felt like I was just stuck and had no way to proceed. I even tried to play the opening levels again on Death Incarnate, and while it was definitely like really hard, I died quite a lot, I still felt it was not like that terrible. Like, it was still like possible to go through, probably just have to save quite a lot. The original version, however, the maps are the same and the kind of combat situations are the same, but it was way more stingy and honestly far harder to clear out enemies without any grenades. Redux gives you grenades and a lot of other options, which honestly makes the combat so much like smoother, to be honest. I can't count how many times just like a cheeky grenade saved my ass, or just helped me clear room without having to waste a ton of bullets. Not the case in the original, where you are even more hard-pressed for ammo, and enemies don't drop any health at all, so it's very easy to end up in a soft lock situation where you basically need to go back like several levels because you used too many bullets maybe 3 maps ago. That all being said, I'd absolutely recommend Arctic Wolf Redux, however, and playing this was by far the peak of WolfenDOOM for me, really nailing that Wolfenstein aesthetic and themes with its maps and general storyline. Maybe Rheingold may have turned out better if it was ever finished. I do like the kind of occupied Paris setting and then traveling around Europe, hypothetically, if it was like according to the storyline on Las Rojas' website. But considering it will never be finished, I'd say Arctic Wolf for me is getting 5 doggo stabbings out of 5. So that was my WolfenDOOM experience. A great set of WADs and a classic for anyone who really wants to try out Wolfenstein. I think playing these really made me appreciate how well the relative simplicity of Wolfenstein works. Now I think the next step for me will be And remember guys, if you like the kind of content I make here, remember to like the video and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. But either way guys, I'll see you again next time. So goodbye everyone.